Welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Future podcast. We recently ran a Vision AI workshop, and there were a lot of great, interesting conversations that happened in the workshop. Thought, why not just turn it into a podcast? So here we are today, and I'm your host, Mahesh Krishnan, and with me today I have my colleague, data scientist, and AI subject matter expert, Peter Kroy, in the show. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you very much for having me, Mahesh. It's a pleasure.
Peter, before we get into the nitty-gritty details of Vision AI, I want to start with a story that showcases Vision AI. A couple of years ago, the French government, actually the tax office, they thought it would be a great idea to use Google Earth, basically visions of satellite images of properties, and apply Vision AI on top of it, and then determine whether people had swimming pools on it. As you can actually imagine, if you have a swimming pool in your property, the value of your property goes up, which means you need to pay more taxes. So what a lot of people were doing was, to avoid paying extra tax, they were just not declaring these swimming pools that they had actually built illegally. So they did a pilot in about 9 districts, and I think they found about 20,000 swimming pools, right? And that meant about 10 million euros in revenue for the tax office. Now, they had expanded they've expanded the program since, and last year, from what I believe, they found about 120,000 swimming pools illegally, right? And I think that led to about 50 million euros of revenue every year. Now, this is a great example where we've not only solved the problem of productivity. I mean, like, you can't have an army of people just going and knocking down people's doors or peering over fences to look for these swimming pools, right? So it improves productivity, and it's also a great revenue generator for the government. So, Peter, you worked with Vision AI extensively, and we've probably spoken about Vision AI in the past in this podcast. But I want to get your definition of what Vision AI is. And please don't use any jargons. They basically make my head spin.
So no convolutional neural networks or backpropagation. So Vision AI is basically the ability for a computer to process an image and see and understand what we see. So in the same ways that your visual cortex acquires data, processes the data, and then understands and perceives it, the computer does the same. So we do that through recognizing patterns, edges, objects that we're familiar with, and we learn over time. So we're able to basically perceive our environment, and this is Vision AI is the computer being able to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, so would it be the same as a human analyzing it, or would it be better, or would it be worse?
That's a good question. It's in some ways it is worse, but in other ways, in many ways, it's a lot better. A computer doesn't get tired. It can look at things continuously. It can see things that we can't see. It can identify patterns that our human brain can't identify as well. So in some ways, the human brain is very good at generalizing and looking for things, being able to adapt to things that it hasn't seen before. And a computer struggles to do that. But in other ways, a computer can recognize patterns that we can't perceive.
Okay, Peter, that's a nice definition of Vision AI. But can you give an example of how it's used?
Well, a good recent example would be we've had violent behavior in shopping malls recently. Not just a few weeks ago. I think there was some machetes or something, some kids running around with machetes. It was a very serious incident, and it took a while for people to respond. Having Vision AI looking over the CCTV would be able to identify these behaviors, these objects, these kids running around at an earlier phase, and would allow us to interact, basically to authorize the security guards to tell them to go and intercept on a much quicker basis.
Yeah, but look, I think we already have, a lot of the shopping malls already have CCTV cameras and everything else, right? But the biggest problem is having all these security guards looking at these images all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's impossible. You can't have 24/7, 365 days a year. You have to. This is what Vision AI allows us to do. It allows us to automate that. So having a computer look over this stuff continuously means that we don't have to have multiple security guards looking things over. We don't have to have them disappearing on toilet breaks or anything like that. And so we have continuous monitoring, which of course is very important.
Look, this is impressive, but I can actually already start people thinking about, well, Big Brother is watching, right? So privacy is going to be a big concern when you have AI watching over you, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I think we have to bear in mind that the CCTV cameras are already in place and already monitoring. So it's not as if an AI is suddenly looking into areas that it couldn't previously.
Yep.
So really what we're taking the feed from the CCTV and then we're processing that through an AI system.
Look, but I think there was a recent example at Bunnings where there's a lot of negative reaction to the fact that they were using AI on top of the CCTV camera, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, and it was an interesting case. I guess with vision AI, with vision, it's quite visceral because you and I as human beings, we can recognize a face and we can see ourselves. It's a bit more difficult with the technology that we're using to recognize yourself. So maybe I'll explain a bit better. The technology we use in the same way that your visual cortex sort of identifies edges and layers and things, what we do is we identify the shape of a human being. We use some machine learning program to do that. Once that image has been recognized, that sort of outline of a person, we supplant that, we overlay that with a skeletal model. So that has a number of joints and limbs and such like. And we put that over the top of the image. And then we use a 3D modeling system to basically extrapolate that into a 3D space. And by doing that, we get an image of a person. We can look at the way that they're moving and behaving. And so we can predict that kind of behavior. Thing is, nothing in that uniquely identifies a person. So there is nothing specific to a Mahesh skeleton or indeed a Peter skeleton. We may have the same length of limbs or something like that, but it couldn't be related to you. So I can't take that skeleton and say, aha, Mahesh is stealing from Bunnings.
So Peter, what you're saying is that you basically have a bunch of stick figures, right, walking around doing things, and you're only looking at the stick figure and not the person doing this function, right?
Correct. So we can basically remove all of the background. We can remove the image of the person. So it is essentially just a stick figure on a dark background doing something.
Yep.
So,
and can we use? I think we can potentially use LiDAR as well, right? You can get point cloud and then slap in.
Correct. Yeah. So when we talk about vision AI, most people think about the visible wavelength of light, but of course there's different wavelengths. And we can look at millimeter wave, as you just mentioned, which we as humans can't perceive, but we have equipment that can do that. So I think your Wi-Fi router and things like that can do millimeter wave. And what that can give us is an image, an outline of objects. It's not super accurate, but it's accurate enough to get a point cloud of, say, a person or something like that, behaving in a certain way. And of course, there's nothing identifying about that, but it's enough for us to identify that a human being is in a certain position or a certain posture. So in environments where you want to maintain privacy, like a toilet or a prison,
aged care facility where you want to
Absolutely.
monitor people, not they don't take a fall or something.
Yeah, or a prison even. We can identify when a human being is prone on the ground or kneeling over or something like that, and that of course is very useful from a safety perspective.
So Peter, we both worked on some of these vision AI projects. It always hasn't been smooth sailing. So maybe can you share with our viewers some of the things that we should look out for when we're working or when we're using vision AI?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the most common problem that you'd come across is occlusion.
Right.
So if you have a single camera looking on a scene, it's not uncommon for that camera to be blocked in some way or something to get it in the way of the target that you're looking at.
It's similar to, if I'm looking at you and if something comes in the way, then I will not be able to figure out what you're doing, right? The same thing applies for a camera as well.
I'm glad you understand that so easily because a lot of people they seem to think that vision AI can do everything and it can't. You can only perceive what's in front of you. Right. And if that's blocked in some way, and we call that occlusion,
right.
Then you can't perceive what's going on behind. Our brain is very good at extrapolating what might happen once the object is in the clear, but it's much more difficult for vision AI to do that, for the computer to process that. So occlusion is a big problem. We've come across that in a number of different scenarios.
Right.
And of course, another one would be lighting. Lighting is a big problem for us. Cameras aren't as good as the human eye at contrast. So the dynamic range of your camera isn't as great as the human eye. So what might be easy for us to discern, a person in the shadows or something, is not so easy for a computer to work out. And we've run into a few problems with that as well, where people haven't been perceived in certain environments and have been hiding away. And another example would be we've come across examples where we've had pigeons identified as human beings. Which was rather amusing. because you don't have any depth perception or size on a 2D image, it's quite difficult for us to pick up. And so a pigeon that was in the foreground was behaving in a very human-like manner. And so
I remember this incident where they were fighting each other. So one pigeon was kicking the other pigeon.
yeah, it was a tough pigeon. We also had adverts being picked up. It recognized a human face or a human figure on the side of vehicles.
Right.
And so what appeared to be a human being was sort of floating through the air next to our scene. So there's plenty of examples of what can go wrong. But I would say occlusion, lighting, and I think perhaps another consideration would be the camera position and the nature of the camera. So in the example that I've been talking about, we couldn't have a fisheye lens or something like that because it's very difficult because we have the spherical distortion of the camera, which impacts the shape of your skeleton. So if you're standing at the edge of that, your skeleton will be bent in an unusual angle.
Yep.
And similarly, the camera itself, if it's positioned too high and doesn't have a good, if it's positioned too high and is looking down on your target, it can't perceive the skeleton as well, of course, because the skeleton's at an angle.
Right. I think this is the barrel edge distortion, as we call it. Even with wide angles, people towards the edge start to look like they're standing at an angle, and to the vision AI, it may appear that they're actually falling or something like that. Right.
That's
something
right.
to watch.
And
for.
that's quite a common problem with CCTV because it tries to capture as much in the field of view as possible.
Yeah. And there are some software that compensates for it as well these days, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are. Even some of the cameras have that built into the firmware.
Okay. So I'm guessing that false positives can be a big headache in vision AI?
Absolutely. False positives is probably one of the biggest challenges you have in most AI systems where what you're seeking is a rare event. So in vision AI, if you're looking for a specific behavior or something that doesn't happen very often, you have to balance the chance of capturing all of the events that you're looking for against the risking the quality of everything that you have captured, if you will. So if I'm looking for a rare behavior, I don't know, someone pulling a machete or something, and I'm training my system to look for that, it doesn't happen very often. And so we have to make sure that behavior is not missed because it's very important to pick that up. But at the same time, we don't want to have lots of false positives where we're getting people pulling a phone out of their pocket or whatever it may be that looks like pulling a machete. So yes, false positives, huge problem.
Yeah. I mean, I can actually imagine, right? I mean, someone hugging another person could be misinterpreted as, someone doing a stranglehold or something on the other person as well, right? So those are the kind of things that we need to worry about as well.
That's exactly right. And that relates to the occlusion as well. Often from where we're looking, we don't see both people going up to each other together perfectly. Right. And if one person does hug another, that's very similar to grappling someone or putting someone in a chokehold.
Yep.
And in fact, that was a scenario that we had to train for specifically. We had a lot of false positives from people hugging people at
bus stations.
Bus stations. Thank you very much. Yes, that's right.
Okay, Peter, speaking of things going wrong, there have been some cases where it's gone spectacularly wrong while using vision AI, isn't it? Maybe share a couple of examples with our listeners?
Yeah, I guess the most spectacular cases do involve facial recognition because most facial recognition systems have been trained using a lot of faces that are Caucasian in nature. And of course, what happens then is you get a great data set and a great model for picking up white faces.
Right.
Not so good at extending to different races. So what has happened previously is that the systems have basically produced racist systems. They racially discriminate. Right. So in some cases, I think black people have been wrongly identified for crimes picked up by the police. And I think there was one case in Niger Parks in about 2019 where some gentleman was wrongly identified committing a crime, picked up, and I think put in prison for 10 days. So, yeah, facial recognition and racial bias is a huge problem in this area. And it's mostly due to training.
Okay, let's get back to positive applications, right? What other scenarios, use cases can you think of where vision AI can be applied in public sector?
Well, off the top of my head, I guess traffic and safety. Road safety. So vision AI allows us to look at the conditions of an environment, the conditions of the road, traffic violations, flooding. All this kind of information can be captured and automated and alerted to other people. So that would be a rather simple one that we're all aware of. Other examples would be things like bushfire detection, which is relevant to the Australian market. where we are able to detect smoke from a fire, even perceive small amounts of smoke and see that grow and grow, and then alert on that so we can take action before it grows out of control. So that would be two use cases.
Speaking of bushfires, you can actually do this with drones as well. And I've got a great example of how we've used drones. As you can imagine, having the right number of native animals in a certain area is really important for ecological balance of that area. And so in the past, some of these government departments, what they do is that they want to make sure that they've got the right number of kangaroos, koalas, wombats, and everything else. And so they would send out spotters, right? So someone would actually go in and look for a kangaroo and then say like, hey, look, I've found one kangaroo. These are very difficult to spot. So we'll multiply by 50 and that'll give you the number of kangaroos in that area. Or you would have a whole bunch of people go through a specific area and count the number of native species. Now, what we've been able to do is we've been able to fly a drone. And so in fact, one of the people actually remarked on the project, right, is that we had like 31 people do this for 8 hours, go through an area and count the number of wildlife. You have been able to do it in about 4 hours with like one drone and AI to have exactly the same amount of the calculation, the precise number of native animals in that area. So this is another example of how vision AI can be used with drones.
But drones is a great example because drones give us the ability to put vision AI in an environment that's hazardous to humans or human beings can't get to. So, for example, emergency services, we can do search and rescue operations using vision AI on drones to go and look into areas that we can't reach normally. So that's a great example of what we can use it for. Additionally, we can use it for looking at infrastructure, looking at power lines, looking at dam inspection, looking at high buildings and such like to check for faults and problems with that. So drones gives us that ability to put that vision AI into a remote area, and we can benefit from that, of course.
That's great, Peter. When you spoke about emergency services, the first thing that actually came to my mind was healthcare, right? And we didn't touch upon that topic as well. Maybe throw some light into some of the applications of vision AI in the health space.
Yeah, sure. It's a great area for vision AI. We have a lot of traditional technologies. So radiologists would be looking at images of MRIs and CAT scans and such like. And of course, vision AI can help augment that capability and help them do their job and identify those things. Diagnosing diseases, diabetic retinopathy, looking at an image of the back of the eye is a good example. And in fact, that's a great example of where vision AI can actually outperform human beings. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the latest technology allows you to determine someone's gender from a retinal image, something that traditional ophthalmologists find very, very difficult to do if they can do it all. So yeah, healthcare, huge area. So in fact, at Fujitsu, we had a project which looked at images of the brain to identify risk of aneurysms. An aneurysm is when a vessel in the brain swells up and basically spreads blood throughout the brain and impacts that area of the brain, destroys that bit of the brain. So what the imagery was able to do was take these various scans, which were effectively slices through the brain, and then take each one, examine them, render them into 3D, and then look for indications of convolution of the vessels. And that was an indication that there was a risk of aneurysm. So that was a life-saving application of vision AI. Hugely useful.
Great, Peter. But I want to wrap this up as well. I mean, we can keep talking about it all day with all these like great examples and everything else. What would be your key takeaway in terms of applications of vision AI in public sector?
I guess the biggest impact of vision AI would be public safety. This is somewhere where we can really become proactive rather than reactive. We can spot behaviors in advance before they actually happen, or when they do happen, we can respond very, very quickly. And that allows us to de-escalate a situation before it even grows out of control. So, for example, if we can see people behaving in an aggressive manner in a public environment, we're able to announce something on a loudspeaker, or we can have the security services get there quicker. So that would be probably one of the key areas where we can make a difference with vision AI. And of course, there's others. We discussed healthcare, we discussed safety and infrastructure, but one of the biggest things that we can do with vision AI is we can automate tasks that human beings would have to do normally. So you can't have people looking at video footage 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just not possible. With vision AI, we can automate that. And then, of course, that introduces efficiencies.
That's a perfect summary, Peter. My main takeaway is that there are lots and lots of use cases for Vision AI in this space, but we've also got to take a responsible view of Vision AI and how it can be used in the public sector. And to our viewers, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, goodbye.